D&D players, what's the most screwed up thing you've ever done in a game?
Wingardium Leviosa.
I cut the dick off a bandit, put it on a crossbow bolt and fired it at their leader to send a message rolled high, and ended up firing it down his throat during his monologue. DM gave him choking damage each round he failed the strength check to remove. Edit: I was also allowed to keep the wizard's dick to use for similar purposes later in the campaign. It may have magical abilities.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Is here for him. He says he's holding his turn. Someone else swings at the goblin and misses. It's the goblin's turn. The goblin goes to fire at the bard. The bard uses a spell to switch places with someone, my fighter. It kills me. I wasn't invested in the game anyway, so I laugh, say thanks, and leave. The bard sings me out. Halfway down the hall back to my room I hear the DM start yelling. We had a snow day in college and my friend convinced me to play D&D. I was sort of half into it. The DM gave me a pre-rolled fighter for the easy mode. So the DM sends us all a quick IM telling us to meet in the dorm common room with drinks and snacks, in 1 hour. He tells the other guys, I rolled a fighter for Ganglebert because he's new. Come with a new character for yourselves, no bards, they're annoying. 1 hour later, one of the guys shows up in a Ren Fair costume with a guitar, and proudly presents his bard halfling. He literally freestyles bard songs about everything that was happening. The DM was fucking livid. The DM immediately says, this is a one-off campaign. If you die, that's it, you're out. In the first encounter the DM brings up a goblin with a single-shot staff that deals 10,000 damage. The bard rolls high initiative and goes first. He knows this ad hoc goblin.
Wingardium Leviosa.
During a jailbreak, because the wizard is a drunk, my half-orc threw a locked evidence chest at a guard with the intent on knocking him out, but the D20 had other plans. I roll a nat 20 and kill the guard with the chest, which also broke, spilling all the confiscated loot on the ground.
Wingardium Leviosa.
To be changed on the fly. And he expertly did so as a DM. How dare we? DM had designed the town and made a cool grid drawing. Houses, shops, town hall, farmhouses. And on the edge of town, a 20-ish story grain silo. The cleric dies and the lone survivor, our dragonkin, gets close enough to the silo but is wounded and near death. Dragonkin last survivor asks DM if there is grain in the silo. The army and their demon leader are closing in and ready to tear every scale from the dragonkin. DM rolls, yes, there is grain in the silo. Dragonkin nods to us and we smile with understanding. Dragonkin, our lone survivor, uses his turn to make fire with a special ability, and DM didn't know about dust explosions being a very common hazard in grain silos and grain elevators. Months-long campaign over with hours upon hours. DM got butthurt over our party's inventive ways of solving problems. We had to be because he was always running on hard mode. Edit, and I loved it, just trying to add some drama here. He retaliates by sending us into a situation of certain death. Our paladin dies, he's our tank, and we're fighting an entire army division led by a demon-possessed general who gains power by causing death as a blood ritual. Another party member falls. We are fighting in a small town. The streets and choke points with alleys/buildings and whatnot are the only things protecting us from the sheer number of enemies we were being pursued by. Our wizard is killed and our dragonkin and cleric, me, Race, Deva, are now fucked, and DM is throwing us no bone. This was our punishment for thwarting his plans and creating solutions, so inventive he could have never anticipate them, so his pre-made situations often had
Wingardium Leviosa.
of non-play time invested as well. Best campaign I have played is Donski. Town is a crater, main antagonist is vaporized, antagonist's army is vaporized and all party member corpses are vaporized. TL, DR? Challenging DM, inventive party challenges DM. DM signs our death warrant by making us fight an entire army in a town. Our lone survivor turns the town into a crater by using the town's grain silo as a dust bomb and vaporizes all our corpses, vaporizes the army, vaporizes the main antagonist, a demon-possessed leader of the army that we couldn't even win against 4v1. Best campaign I played ever is concluded. We spent months on this. Edit, added some words and I think we had a mule plus cart with all our treasure and extra gear hidden safely a few cities away. I guess that was our gift to the people there? Rough size of our unignited silo collapse for scale with town. B/D. Holes 5 check ? T equals 75. Those are the UN ignited contents of one silo leveling a few farmhouses and burying tractors.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I've been a DM for the last 10 or so years, not really getting much opportunity to roll as a player. One of my crowning moments was when I made my players cry. Here's the setting: the party are traveling through a village overlooked by a menacing manor house. They hear that the children of the town have been kidnapped by the vampire that dwells within the manor and turned. The party knows that if they can kill the vampire before the next full moon, the children will become human again. So they venture into the manor to find and kill the vampire. As they explore the manor house, they find excerpts of the vampire's journal detailing his descent into madness, and eventually vampirism. It tells of how the vampire lost his children to a wasting disease that has plagued the town before, and his wife killed herself shortly after. How he cursed the gods and was cursed in turn. The party
Wingardium Leviosa.
eventually find and kill the vampire lord, but to their shock, the children die shortly after turning back. It turns out that the disease that affected the vampire's children hundreds of years ago was a genetic disease that emerges every so many years. He was kidnapping children with the disease and turning them, saving them from a painful death. Turning them back resulted in the children all succumbing rapidly to the disease. The aftermath of the quest was that the party donated all the gold they found in the manor to the townsfolk, helped bury the children and planted the banner they'd looted a while back as a monument to the lives lost. Oh, and in my current campaign I'm going to kill the party's horse.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Make it look like she hung herself, leaving a note reading, "My dear boys, I fear I have wasted my life with wrong and unredeemable choices. My dying wish is that you learn from my wrongdoings and turn your back to these evil ways. Please don't fall into the seductive and devouring pits of darkness." The group wasn't high on the idea. Also, turned out the boys weren't evil. We told them what happened, they were sad, but went on about their business. I decided I wanted a whip as one of my weapons. Early into our campaign we come across a house of hags. On the first floor we killed the first one. I then wrapped its neck with my whip and dragged it upstairs to show the sisters as a threat. Next, I used my torch and oil to blow fire and burn the second hag. On the third hag, we used a snake to bind her movements, then I rolled a critical with my whip, wrapping my whip around its neck, Indiana Jones style, and had a companion throw her out the window, followed by a critical strength check to yank the whip and snap her neck on the way down. Apparently I was feeling especially aggressive that day. Edit, another time, in the same campaign, we came across a cult leader. We killed her and found out she had adult children. So I grabbed Olay Trust Whip and dragged her from the hidden basement to the main room and decided to use a rope too.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My shaman character had won a non-removable magic pink marker, I think it was in a bar or something, that could write in the air or on anything. The only way to remove the writing was to say the removal incantation that was given to me in secret by the DM. So my friend, being the dick that he was, stole most of my gold and a few potions whilst I was asleep, think I was getting us pizza. So I decided to draw a pink dick on his face. Haha, the poor guy couldn't buy from any merchant as they showed him away. Fun times.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Went through heaven and hell for a side quest which promised to make the main mission easier, since the reward was the answer to any one question we would ask. The idiot orc thief asks, "Do you really know anything?" Yes. Now leave. Didn't really make our characters like him more.
Wingardium Leviosa.
In one campaign there was a war going on and I captured enemy soldier, who has taken part in burning my hometown and torturing people. I cut his tongue off and kept him as my personal slave. It happened when my character was like level 3 and I kept this guy for more than a year and a half worth of campaign. He finally died of poisoning. I used to test my food by giving small bits of it to him. As it turned out, someone tried to kill me this way. Essentially he saved my life. Nuff said, we were playing as the bad guys. Edit, and it was before I read a Soyaf.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We once burned down an orphanage and took the 50 orphans into our care. Then took them out into a cave in a beast-infested wilderness where we tried to establish a summer camp for them. Perpetually traumatized them unintentionally. Our druid taught a few of them to shape-shift and they got stuck as wolf pups and best cubs. The bard started training them as a crew of child pickpockets. Then we kind of got bored and left them in the cave with an upturned wagon as a front door with a dragonkin thief and a tame winter wolf in charge while we went and pursued adventure.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We had a guy who joined our group that we didn't really like and he chose a dwarf. So whenever we ran into a situation where we were worried about setting off a trap, needed to break down a door, or ran into a monster, we kept picking up the dwarf and tossed him at it. It turned out to be remarkably effective.
Wingardium Leviosa.
My party was trying to rally a bunch of gnomes to our side by starting a communist revolution. All the high charisma PCs were quoting Karl Marx, but the rolled really bad. The half-orc barbarian decided to give it a shot, rolled a natural 20. I started blaring the Soviet national anthem on my phone while he said Krusty Krab is unfair. Mr. Krabs is in there. Standing at concession. Plotting his oppression. Glorious.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Oh god, my group's last campaign was all over the place, but one moment deserves a mention. So me and my party are on the road, a barbarian, a druid and me the rogue. I'm on my freshly bought horse and everyone else on the cart. We come across a roadblock, so everyone disembarks to check it out. I know where this is going, there's goblins or worse out there, so I give my new steed a slap to go hide in the woods to save him getting murdered by the DM. Of course what follows was a battle, we win and everything's calmed down. I whistle for my horse to come back when the DM points out to me that I've only owned the horse 5 minutes. He's long gone and I'll just have to get on the cart, can't argue with that logic. But wait, we have a druid. I convince him to turn into a horse and shout him back or something. I don't know how horses communicate. The DM seizes the opportunity, it's a
Wingardium Leviosa.
mating call. My stallion comes running back in a lust-fueled rage. The druid is frantically trying to turn back to elf form. What followed is probably the best thing I'll ever hear in a role-playing game. Roll for penetration. We haven't played since. TLDR, my friend got butt-fucked by a horse while me and a barbarian watched and laughed.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Obligatory, not me but friend. Going around in a campaign, found a sentient sword that turned out to be bound to a demon somehow in another plane or the likes of that, I don't know, while I wanted to figure out more, the party didn't give a fuck. Sword demanded that our paladin would go around slaying women that had been absorbed into the sword, specifically one of our enemies, so that she could eternally serve the demon as a sex slave/concubine for the rest of infinity. Apparently I was the only one that took up issue with this.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Look. Had a GM once who wanted to playtest a new character class, and I was the guinea pig. It was a kind of rogue plus psionic. My randomly rolled key capability/element was fire. One ability I got was that I could turn any blade weapon into a flame tongue. So I met this established group of adventurers as a start of a new campaign. One character had a real flame tongue, and he boasted that it had saved his life numerous times, and that it was such a unique weapon. My character intervened here and said something like rare, maybe, but not unique. Look. And pulled his short sword and dagger, emblazoned in flames. He put them away again, went to the ranger, one of the walking tank variety, and said, and there is another one, too. Roll a successful deception/pickpocket roll, to draw that guy's sword before he could intervene, pulled that ranger's longsword, and let it burst in flames.
Wingardium Leviosa.
First level spell is called Ceremony, which is used to ordain clerics. As orcs were attracted to the temple, I make some clerics. I then used the Combine spell to boost our spell casting abilities. Did I mention the druid sidekick? They have great trap-making spells. The rest of the party decided that there was too much orc power growing in the area, and the temple needed to be destroyed. Well, it's amazing what you can do with some pretty low-level spells when you have time to plan defenses. The entire rest of the party was wiped out when they attempted to attack my temple. It's so satisfying to watch them stumble into traps and ambushes. After playing with them for so many years, I knew exactly the tactics they were going to use, and it was a glorious slaughter. It ended the campaign, but good times. Probably the worst thing was calling a town meeting in the church. It was the biggest building in the town, barring the door and burning it down. The thing that I am most proud of is more complicated. We were playing a Hackmaster 4th edition game. It was an evil campaign with a few evil-leaning neutrals. My sidekick was a human druid. I was playing a half-orc assassin. Despite not being a cleric, I always played the character as a very devout worshipper of Gruumish. We come upon an ancient orc temple to Gruumish, and I decided that it would not do to have the place in disrepair, so my character went about cleaning up and doing repairs. I also turned out we had found an important orcish artifact a few adventures back, which was activated by being placed in the newly cleaned temple. As a result of all this effort, I was made a chosen one, which gave me some spell ability. Well, eh?
Wingardium Leviosa.
I wish I could claim credit for this one, but I found it several years ago. A party finds a locked box in the woods. Apparently it's cursed, and on rolls for insanity. Hilarity ensues. Also, if you can find it, the 4 monks in a noodle shop is a classic. As for me, I inadvertently made fun of non-English speakers. During a campaign we had a member that could only speak and understand Draconian, who would constantly taunt dragons, then direct them to me, often providing them insults or curses that I had supposedly directed towards them. I got pissed after repeatedly being the unofficial tank. So I went to the nearest town to learn basic Draconian. Spent my 20 gold and got a basic language lesson. Next day we are investigating a broken castle with a green dragon guarding a treasure chest. Gold coins are everywhere. Naturally, Draconian speaker steps up to go through his routine, but I stop
Wingardium Leviosa.
him mid-sentence and tell him, I got this. I proceeded to run at the dragon, screaming what I thought was a draconian threat, but instead amounted to the following. My name is Garnock Tilda. What time does the pub open? What's your favorite color? before engaging a thoroughly confused dragon, who gave the serpent version of a shrug and flew away. Edit. So post-dragon follow-up, the draconian speaker is being a little too friendly, and bounces into the tavern filled with mercenaries we happen to be staying at, and loudly declares drinks are on Garnock. To which I quickly reply with domestic meads only. The DM promptly lost it.
Wingardium Leviosa.
So, a member of the party had to go to the local magistrate and my character and another were sent for supplies. One of the items we needed was ale for the dwarf. We found a pub, but we didn't speak the language. The DM rolled and decided there was a huge misunderstanding and the proprietor was under the impression we were looking for troll sex. We procured the ale but failed the roll to clear up the misunderstanding. I was put in a room with a randy troll ready to go. Through a lucky roll I convinced him I could be pitcher and he would be catcher. He put his hands up against the door and turned his back to me. I took my short sword and rammed it up his ass, then jumped on his back and continued ass-swording him till he died. We walked out of the pub and never went back to that area of the city. I was awarded extra XP for creatively resolving a tricky situation.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I was playing an elderly halfling monk who has seen a lot of the world. One of our players ran into a spider swarm and was rolling like shit trying to hit them. I rolled really high initiative for the encounter, but spent my whole turn laughing at them. Eventually our rogue and fighter killed the spiders.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Was the DM for this, and is the reason for many of my current rules. Player tried to seduce everything including a barstool, gets kicked out of the bar. Tried to seduce random noble. Bounty placed on head. Other player was a bounty hunter, successfully killed first guy and was going to bring them in for reward when convinced to instead rob the noble. Party kills noble but decide to screw over first player who they trap in a barrel and roll downhill. First player vows revenge and spends next few sessions trying to assassinate rest of party.
Wingardium Leviosa.
This happens to also be the tale of how I came to realize I didn't really know my friends. It was our first campaign and I volunteered to be DM, putting many hours into developing the plot of a group of young adventurers being sent to a small island with high grey cliffs and a mysterious stormy setting. It was bound to be a good attempt at a campaign, especially considering how I had tried to adjust the choices available for my particular friends and their creative choices. The campaign began with a small rowing boat arriving at the foot of some rotten and creaking stairs. The stairs spiraled way up the cliff and I really dramatized it. They were meant to be humble, worried and respectful. The old blind man rowing the boat put out his hand in a gesture of payment, and I asked what the adventurers would like to do. We'll take his oar, or... Sorry. Yeah, we take his oar, or...
Wingardium Leviosa.
And push him adrift. It's foggy and stormy, right? Yeah, we do that. Okay, well he's blind so, do a strength check, 14. The old man wheezes a little as he attempts to hold on to the slippery long oar. His hands are brittle and weak, so you yank it away with ease. The force makes him wobble as you push his boat slowly away. He stares in your direction with grayed over lost eyes. You see a single tear streak down each cheek as he slowly fades into the fog. Throw the oar at him. I guess roll for strength again. Or accuracy, I think. 18, that's a hit, right? The oar glides gracefully through the fog and hits him square in the forehead, knocking him unconscious and pushing the boat over the edge of your visible horizon. And well, after that point I realized I wouldn't be using my 8,000-word plan, and I didn't really know my friends at all.
Wingardium Leviosa.
In my most recent session, the leader of the town guard tried to poison us, assassinate us and led us into a deadly trap. I then spent a few hours in-game beating his knees and ankles over and over again with a crowbar until he passed out, waited for him to wake up, and then did it again, calling him bitch boy the entire time. The DM said that I dealt him permanent dexterity damage. Also I raped a goblin with a pickle and flayed a man alive, but I think the first one takes the cake.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We were in a campaign in Sharn, City of Towers. It was the final showdown. The Lich had the MacGuffin. He was escaping in an elemental skiff. I was playing a teleporting ranger. I bamf onto the deck behind the pilot with our fighter, and he cleaves the poor devil in twain with his greatsword. The Lich hits me with some dark mojo. Without the pilot, the skiff starts to free fall amongst the towers and bridges. The fighter loses his footing, and the Lich blasts him off the deck. I start wrestling the Lich for the MacGuffin, because hey, he's a Lich, he can't be that strong. We're stalemated though, neither one of us can get the upper hand and we're plunging to a fiery death. Then I get a hand free, pull out the immovable rod and click the button. An immovable rod does just what it says on the tin. And I put it between me and the falling Lich. The two of us were arrested in freefall.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Instantaneously. I critical the roll to hang on to the rod, though I dislodge my shoulder and take damage from the jolt. The Lich is hit dead center mass by a solid object at terminal velocity. It crushes most of the bones in his chest and rips through his back as he continues to fall. I have the MacGuffin, and manage to bamf to the nearest bridge and collapse. He falls to the streets below, on top of the exploding wreckage of the skiff. Moral: never let your players use physics.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Child's blood. I waited outside the town while my party discovered the act and the town erupted in panic, threatening to kill the newcomers for bringing this evil. They chose to flee without causing more harm. Fuck those fish. Incredibly excited and wanted to show his wife that the visitors were friendly and had given him a wonderful new hat. Now jump back to me. I didn't know what was happening outside. As soon as the chief rushed on through the door to see my holding his wife and child hostage, I reacted with a shot from my hand crossbow. I rolled a 20 and shot him square between the eyes with such force that his body was thrown out the door and hat flew off his head. His wife screamed and rushed me. I threw the baby at her, which she caught, and then I leapt out the window only to find myself surrounded. My party then apprehended me and claimed I was a criminal they were hunting. The fish people took all of my weapons and armor, then locked me in a cage. Fast forward to the night I escaped my cage, stole a knife, and brutally murdered the chief's child and wrote curses on the walls of the home using the townsfolk up. While I was on the roof, fish people with flimsy weapons started to exit their homes to see who these strangers terror. During my time on the roof I decided to sneak down. I however failed my agility check and fell straight through, where I was greeted by a female fish person holding her baby. Thinking quickly, I rushed the women and held her child hostage at sword point, threatening her to be quiet. After a few minutes of observing the room and analyzing exits, a fishman came rushing in through the front door with a pirate's hat on. Now rewinding a bit, let me fill you in on what happened outside. The fish people gathered in the square to investigate my party. After some brief arm flailing to communicate, our charming captain managed to convince the chief that we were all friendly and meant no harm. The captain gifted the chief his pirate hat as a sign of good faith. The chief was my first time playing D&D with a few of my friends who were also new. I decided I wanted to be a chaotic evil dark elf rogue with a short sword and hand crossbow. The story started as us being crew to a charming pirate captain and shipwrecking on a mysterious island. Our first battle was against some basic crabs, and my newbie friend who was playing a druid decided mid-fight that he wanted to tell the weather forecast for tomorrow, hoping that the information would somehow sway the crabs to forgive us for killing their children. The DM took a long pause and informed him that tomorrow would be sunny. The crabs did not care. Later in the campaign we found a village with no one in sight, so we decided to investigate. Me, being the sneaky rogue, decided to climb up on one of the flimsy thatch roofs to observe the town. My other comrades chose to walk straight in and make noises to wake the
Wingardium Leviosa.
with my humongous wang. DM then told me to roll again for some reason, another nat 20. What ended up happening was I slayed all the ghouls with my wang and we walked out unharmed. My DM then found a way for my character to be killed in the next time we met up, as he felt I had grown too big for my boots. I miss you, Guy, you magnificent ogre. One of my first times playing D&D with very little knowledge of how the game is played, I thought I would build a simple tank character and see how things went. Well, my character was not only really stupid but ended up surviving a lot longer than everyone else's characters. Some people were on their 2ND/3RD character. We entered a dungeon with about 8 or 9 ghouls lurking about, and we could either sneak past them or fight them. Now, since I had very low intelligence and I rolled bad on my sneak, my DM decided that while trying to sneak past I would start humming a tune, which meant we all got caught, so the only choice was to fight. I decided to use my rage ability to attack as many as possible, rolled a nat 20. Now the DM asks me how I would like to attack these ghouls. In my slightly overexcited thought process of first 20 in a fight sequence, I said, I will slay these foul ghouls.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Redditors who have played 5th edition may recognize this because it happened on the Horde of the Dragon Queen campaign. There's a part where the party is supposed to go from a town to a fort. There's a hill giant along the route, and then the fort is supposed to be a tough fight. So I'm the party's squishy wizard, or to be exact, the squishy sorcerer, and happen to have a skill in cooking. We had killed several drakes earlier and I had taken fillets off of them and turned them into jerky. We see the hill giant before she sees us, so I use telekinesis to float jerky to her. Being a dumb hill giant, she gobbles it up. Then I telekinase more jerky, the giant chases after it, and the jerky ends up as bait, taking the hill giant down the road ahead of us toward the fort. The fort defenders see this hill giant running toward them and start combat. The hill giant fights for her life, taking
Wingardium Leviosa.
down several defenders before dying. Neither the hill giant nor the fort defenders notice our party while all of this goes down. So for the cost of a cantrip, our party avoids one fight entirely, and gets the surprise on a weakened enemy in the next combat. The DM was torn between hating how game-breaking this was and kind of admiring it as a player tactic. I'm the kind of player who pulls this crap all the time. The same DM let me have cayenne pepper, used it to improvise pepper spray. Probably the reason I got away with it was because IRL I cook and bake pretty well. Couldn't bring himself to kill off the player who brought home baked blueberry pie to the gaming sessions.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Was secretly a werewolf the whole campaign. Was partied up amongst hunters too.
Wingardium Leviosa.
If it's the first campaign for everybody in your group, keep it relatively vanilla. Once you and the DM are familiar with the rules, you can modify or find almost any character variation you want. However, especially if you're new, you run the risk of being severely overpowered or underpowered. In most cases, a situation like that will either ruin the game for the other players, or for yourself.
Wingardium Leviosa.
During a game I was DMing, I had a green hag lure the party into her house, made of gingerbread, in an attempt to eat them. When she tried this in their sleep, she was caught, and after a series of awful rolls for the hag, she was killed. 2 members of the party took her saggy breasts and turned them into bags. Same party also put hallucinogenic mushrooms into the main cask of an inn before leaving town just to shake things up.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Standing near. At this point my entire crew is in tears of laughter, and the other party member who was with us on the cliff jokingly asked if I wanted to play a second round. I responded, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." And he picked up his D20. And I picked up mine. Me, 20, Crete. Him, 4. So in-game, what immediately happens after I accidentally shove my friend off of a cliff is that I turn to the other person there, jokingly raise my hands again, and then just shove him off right after. That was quite an awkward moment when the rest of the party got back and I had to explain why I was the only one left. One time, our party of 6 was split in half, 3 had gone back to town to fetch supplies, and myself and 2 others were just waiting for them to get back. In the meantime, we decided to play patty cake to pass the time. This was basically just a joke, but then our DM said, "All right then, you two who are playing, roll a dexterity contest, to see who slips up first." We thought, hey, this is at least a way for someone to feel like they've accomplished something while we're literally just sitting here, so sure. What's the worst that could happen? And then we looked at the results. Me, 17. Friend I was playing against, 1, critical fail. Our DM just went silent for a second. I think in that moment it dawned on all of us what was about to happen. My character got just a little too into the game, and my friend, completely failing to keep up, went tumbling off the side of the cliff we were.
Wingardium Leviosa.
If you're a fan of this sort of thing but don't have the time or people play, consider checking out D&D podcasts. There are a bunch of different ones where people play through campaigns. My personal recommendation is The Adventure Zone, which is a comedy D&D podcast. You won't learn how to play the game listening to them, but it's the funniest piece of improv comedy I've ever heard.
Wingardium Leviosa.
And take all of his potatoes, and his skillet. We go back to camp and sleep, and awaken to a new day, headed for town. We go to town and intend on selling all of our potatoes. We wash all of them off, and the wizard in our party uses prestidigitation to make them all smell great. Thief attempts to make a check to sell them to a customer, and rolls terribly. Wizard then does the same, using the one utility spell to replace her deception with Arcana. Natural fucking 20. We sold all of the potatoes, like 60 or 70, for somewhere around 150 to 200 gold. We then left town and were never seen again. 10/10, would murder farmer and steal potatoes again. TL, drive, orc get mad, potatoes were had, greed is bad, farmer's wife is sad. Disgruntled, as my character says I use skillet now please, in his most polite tone. He refuses. My character becomes upset, and asks again. I use skillet now please. He refuses. I then see a thief sneaking up behind said farmer, who had entered from the back of the house. The thief garrots the farmer, and my character charges him and kills him. Anger does these things. We then hear movement from the other room, and both rush in trying to figure out what it is. The farmer's wife wakes up, screaming and crying. The thief decided to take out his rope, and tie her down to the bed so we can make our daring escape. The thief rolls a deception check, natural 20. He writes a letter about how the farmer was involved in a mafia of sorts, and how he had failed his duties and had to be killed. Due to the natural 20, this letter was totally believable. We then proceed to steal his wagon. I may be a bit late, but this thread is calling my name. This is the story of how our one-shot campaign party ignored the railroad, and became potato entrepreneurs. I was playing a half-orc warrior. Low intelligence and charisma, of course. My friend Matt was playing a thief. We came across a farm and I decided to take a potato to go eat for dinner. We camp out for the night and I'm sitting by the campfire, trying to slice this potato up with my battle axe and then cook it on the side of the blade, which is not working too well. My thief friend offers to help me find a skillet to cook my potato in, and my character, not wanting to be rude, says he'll go ask the farmer for one. Here is where the fun begins. We find the farmhouse again, and I politely knock on the front door. Thief is nowhere to be found, which is a sign something bad will happen. The door opens and the farmer seems
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wasn't me, but my mate managed to seduce a dragon and promised sex for its gold, however ditched out of the deal with the gold, leaving us with a pissed and horny dragon. Got out only to encounter it next game and had to sacrifice one of us to its lust to escape. The player responsible wasn't the victim, the new guy was. The poor bastard didn't play D, and D the same after that. Bloody bards.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I ran a homebrew campaign where anything could happen if you rolled right and could reasonably do it with what the party had. So my players decided to utilize a small fire rune, healing spells and gear, and their trusty massive barbarian NPC sidekick. In short, they hollowed out his chest while keeping him alive and turned him into a living breathing pizza oven, who screamed in horrible agony every time they used him to warm up some food.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Yes, an awesome question for me. We searched a witch and needed information. The only person willing to give us these was the local mayor. We approached his house at dawn, the cleric and me, half-orc Barb, head for the front door. The cleric knocks and knocks and knocks, but nothing happens. After 5 minutes the door opens slowly. My temper was really low at this point because I was really hungry. So as soon as I can get glaze of the person behind the door, I smash it down with my 2H axe. I roll attack and get a 20, another roll and 18, so Crete is ready. I smash the door and kill the mayor. Cleric can't stand my behavior and leaves the group. Plus new character. The day was born and so my name Grunak Smash.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We found a cursed gem that froze anything it touched. We had no way of touching it since it worked through gloves. We had 2 sheep with us, and I, being a half-orc, decided they were about mitten size. So I punched a hole into both of them. One of them dies, the other screams and screams till I grab the gem and it freezes. Got a good amount of gold for that thing once we got rid of the curse.
Wingardium Leviosa.
It was D&D-like-ish custom adventure game, when my friend rolled one as luck check while zipping his pants. He cut his penis with his pants basically. As a healer I had to heal his wound with 6/10 roll. So he had his whiner attached back with a pair of stitches and some holy power.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Found a dead squirrel and a party member decided they wanted to keep it. Eventually, we're in a village and come upon this religious gathering and are asked for a donation. Without missing a beat, he put the dead squirrel that he had had for several in-game days in the collection plate and walked away. Edit BC typo.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Well, I once made a character that I knew would attempt to kill the entire game. Basically he had split personality disorder because his body was inhabited by an ancient warlord who was hungry for violence. And whenever a stressful situation came up I would have to roll to see if I had the willpower to keep my demon at bay or not. Well, one time our group looted a masterwork frost bow, and my demonic character decided he wanted the bow. At least that's what my DM told me. He would tell me things at random in order to give me evil side of voice. I told the group I wanted it, but ultimately it was given to our ranger. The DM told me that I didn't like that. So one time during battle my demonic side took over. And normally after battles it goes away. However, trying to stay in character, I asked the DM if I could roll to stay as my demonic self. And continuously do that. Well, I succeeded.
Wingardium Leviosa.
And pretended to be my normal self for the rest of the group. At night when everyone was asleep I decided to try and steal the bow. However, I was unsuccessful and woke the ranger. I then killed the ranger out of fear of being caught. Then everyone woke up and found me. I ran away, and stalked them with a hope to slowly pick them off. However, I was found out and they killed me. I feel kind of bad for this. However, it was my first campaign, and I didn't really understand D&D etiquette. Like if you play an evil character, you should still work with the group.
Wingardium Leviosa.
No meals, no breaks. The group was caught up with trying to find a Rakshasa, shape-shifting tiger wizard Bond villain type, who was perverting the holy rituals in the town. The second day he painstakingly mixed the ingredients into a moldable, very explosive clay he dubbed Solar C4, and the party spent that whole day metagamming their asses off trying to find him, but no one had bothered to ask what he was doing, or where he was staying, so no searches were allowed. For the last 2 days, Sean slaved over this clay, carefully carving out 101-foot statues in pillars likeness, arms thrust forward like Rafiki showing Simba off on Pride Rock, big sigil of Pella upon the tabard, etc., and 1 6-foot masterpiece. He fitted a focusing lens into the outstretched hands of each one as they arrived next day, and wrote out tiny instruction cards for each. Place me in a sunny spot. When the sun lines up just right, it's good luck. Do you hear Sean laughing? The party had finally figured out which cardinal the Rakshasa was, and was wondering how to expose him, when Sean comes parading in with a cart full of awesome religious statuary to donate to the town. Total chaos as the townsfolk set the statue on the reflecting fountain and party all night to celebrate Sean's wondrous generosity. All the cardinals come out, people are blessing shit in the streets. Chaos? The party is panicking. They failed their already shady investigating roles and can't tell the statues are bombs. Their target is mid-blessing on the big statue, and will likely disappear soon, and the sky is getting lighter. The wizard and Scion work together to melt a bunch of silver coins into a clay flagon, and the rogue, wearing her bedroll as a mitt, performs a gruesome molten silver to the face surprise Crete, which miraculously kills the Rakshasa and misses blowing up the main statue. The townspeople immediately grab and lynch the party. The plan is to drag them behind a big wagon around town until death. Sean, still laughing, demands to drive it and the town agrees. The party, sans equipment, absolutely expected Sean to murder them. Instead he drove them straight out of town through a wheat field to cushion the ground until he heard the first thud. A florist's shop had exploded. The guards were looking into the damage, when the upstairs of a house down the road blasted cobblestone out over the road. The statues went off in waves as the sun rose higher. The party watched in horror as the explosions and resulting wildfires and stampedes razed the town to rubble. When the big one went off, Sean dedicated the lives lost in the chaos to my idea of a god of explosions who I name Bamf. And that's the story of why I have a chaotic evil minor deity of explosions in my campaign, and why Sean is the fucking Antichrist. I also have the time Sean made a DM literally cry. The time Sean died upon game start, and the sudden appearance of identical family members. The time Sean screwed 5 hours of my prep time with a mech cannon and a metal lizard folk. Sean's time stop shop explosion. Sean vs. Strahd, a chronicle. Sean gets mistaken for a baby Rajadrake and drowns his siblings while mom's out hunting. Why Sean is not allowed time travel. Sean breeds rabbits for a soul farm. And quite a few more. His Diablerist Bruya from Vampire, The Masquerade is an even more violent series of stories as well, if you're interested. Of Pella El Good Sun God. Had a beautiful reflecting fountain in the center square. Sean asks to try to find explosives materials. He's been looking for a while, so I'm gonna give him a crazy Chinese fireworks cart. Nat 20, so I upgrade it to a wagon load. I underestimated how much the party was willing to back him, and he had gold to spare after buying the whole wagon. Sean asks if Therese and where to buy fertilizer and clay, and I'm curious, mild foreboding at this point, so I set it up, and he buys a cartload of each and rents a barn for a week. He then blows all his remaining gold on magnifying lenses. 1 plate size, 100 coin size. I made it very expensive because alarm bells were ringing in my head, and told him this would take 5 days, because it's difficult glasswork, and because this was likely to derail the current plotline. For the first day he stripped down all the fireworks. DM story time. I'm gonna tell you the saga of Sean. Sean is my best friend. We've played D&D, and Vampire, for years, and in nearly every campaign I've run he has played 2 types of character. A monster race barbarian or monk with killer STR Dexcon. Or exactly the same thing but a midget. Man knows what he wants. But Therese a problem, for DMs. Sean plays like a psychopathic rogue or a wizard. Sean is devious. Sean is tricksy. Do not believe Sean's lies. Do not take Sean lightly. Sean wanted at one point to make a custom deity, Bamf, god of explosions, for his newest character to worship. A barbarian who loves fireworks and knows basic chemistry as a result. I told him nope, because explosions are too rare to be used for worship. Carrot yeah that, up there. Mistake? Fast forward a few days. We're in our first decent city, a lawful good cobblestone jobby governed by the church.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We decide since we're the only ones who know what happened we have to travel back in time and stop me from drinking the potion. Immediately I have and announce 2 thoughts. Nothing we do until we travel back in time will actually happen, so we need to pull off the greatest heist in history while we have the chance. I wanna drink it again when get back. Unfortunately, my GM broke up with his GF, one of our players, and the group kinda broke up after that. But since then I've wanted to base an adventure on this scenario with our old group as the bad guys. We had a game where the GM would grant us these magical mystery potions as quest rewards and such. When you drank one, you would then roll on a table of 10,000 wild magic effects. Most of the time, the effect would be hidden until triggered. One person got the ability to psychically summon bear, another became magnetic when wet, and someone else had everything stolen by magical ninjas. Good times. Well, one day I ink a potion and roll a perfect 10,000, the result was the nearest star explodes in a massive supernova. We didn't want it to be game over, so we decided a wizard had planned for just such an occasion and placed a shield around the planet that would trigger and keep us from getting vaporized. So now we're merely hurtling through space, completely blinded at all times, with what we figure is only a few weeks before this all calms down and we start freezing to death.
Wingardium Leviosa.
So my friends and I were playing for the first time. I was DM. Though we were all pretty noob. Our characters. A blind angry dwarf, a retarded orc, a handsome slut of a halfling, a drunken wizard. On our first mission my friends did some pretty awful things to the last remaining goblin. The wizard slapped him with a sack of wine and then the rest grabbed him, held him down and forced wine down its throat. Meanwhile the blind dwarf is running around attacking rocks in the background. They just keep slapping the poor little goblin back and forth and filling it up with wine. Then the retard orc grabs the goblin by the mouth, holds it down and unleashes a torrent of orc fecal matter down its gullet in a grim finishing move. Fun was had by all.
Wingardium Leviosa.
I don't play D&D. What kinds of bonuses?
Wingardium Leviosa.
He may be referring to the trophy collector feat from D&D 3.5, Player's Handbook 2. It allows you to take trophies from creatures that have a combat rating higher than your level, and gives you bonuses to intimidate versus creatures of that type, as well as a once per day bonus against fear effects. You can also sell trophies for a bunch of money.
Wingardium Leviosa.
As the DM, I gave the crazy girl in the group a wand of wonder with an load of charges. She used it constantly, and it fucked over the group as much as it helped them. I pretty much knew she'd do that as soon as I gave it to her. Made the rest of that afternoon very entertaining.
Wingardium Leviosa.
DM had our party infiltrate a cult and my cleric was pissed about having to disavow her goddess in order to join. The next day the cultists were leading a rally, and had started pickpocketing the people who had gathered to watch. It was pretty obvious we were supposed to stop them by having superior stealth skills. I started a riot.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Group, just you. I knew I had made a terrible mistake. My next turn, I looked at him like, please help me, I don't know what to do, and he was like, what do rogues do best, and I was just oh. So I managed to stealth away. I don't remember what happened, just that I was safe. The aforementioned halfling stealthed into another dimension, and our high damage fighter ended up winning the fight. As a reward, the saint gave me a turtleneck, which I cut a titty window in, and the DM gave me a new skills set of seduction. It was a great campaign. Unfortunately I don't play with that group anymore, since there's been a few falling outs. I can't fucking wait to get out of high school. Edit, another thing, I was describing Verena having tits out of this world, and my now ex beside me did this nod thing and smiled. I was flattered. Was pretty pumped. When he introduced the saint, he was sitting at the campfire, and my DM turned to me and asked what I said to this guy who just showed up out of nowhere. My immediate answer was, hey there stranger, and the DM burst into laughter. I had so many responses planned, but I have nothing for that one. Oh yeah, we met giant reindeer beasts and our halfling tried to climb one, got kicked into the snow, and was saved by the power of friendship. The game continued and eventually we got to the frost giant. We had 3 rogues in our party, which was admittedly a huge mistake. So while our tank and high damage fighter, I don't remember the correct term, I'm sorry, got into the fight, I asked if I could flash the frost giant. I rolled a 20. My DM looked at me and laughed. You give the frost giant another weapon to use. He now doesn't care about the others of yore. I literally just made a Reddit account so I can tell my stupid D&D stories. I was at a conference with some soon-to-be close friends, and we're all loser nerds, so what better to do than play a loser nerd game? I was feeling pretty adventurous, as I'm normally really shy, so I made a seductress rogue character named Verena. I love her to death. The first campaign goes nowhere, as we were only together for a couple of nights and my friends had presentations to put together. However, our characters were in prison, and one of my friends was like, hey, can I roll to intimidate a guard? And our DM was like, sure. So he did. He rolled a 20, screamed so loud he scared himself, and immediately shit himself and passed out. I love my DM. The next time we played, it was Christmas time and my DM made a themed campaign. It involved a frost giant and a saint. He let me keep my character, so I
Wingardium Leviosa.
changed my mind. Had to wait for the rest of the group. They planned to enter too, so my character could assume that they'd be coming soon. Well, my char got bored. He saw a horse. Did the only logical thing there was to do and violated the horse. Turns out they make noise when getting fucked in the ass. Guards storm in and swarm the whole area, rest of group panics and decides to fight. All wiped? Killed my whole group in my first game ever. I will try to pull as many details as possible. So it was our job to go to a city and gather a bit of information. We had other new players at the table too, so it was also an opportunity for us to roleplay a bit before actually starting the game. Either way, one of them hears about someone in a stable, hanging from the ceiling. Lots of guards around, not because of the importance of the stable but because it was close to their quarters. I'm not exactly sure what our GM had intended to happen, but he was a bit angry when we found out about it so early. Either way, we gather close to it and discuss our plan. I don't need a plan. I am here to roleplay. I want to get in. I managed to sneak in, avoid 2 traps unintentionally, and saw our GM shuffling around. I figured I'd probably hang next to the guy if I tried to cut him down, so I
Wingardium Leviosa.
The worst I've done was probably what I did yesterday. A dwarf was actively working towards wiping out all sub-races, leaving only dwarves and elves. He had this mirror that if tipped sideways would drop things in and out of some type of alternate dimension. I put him in there and swung my staff to break it. The Dragonborn in my party tried to stop me, but I rolled a 20 in a strength check against him and successfully broke the mirror and trapped him in there.
Wingardium Leviosa.
We were returning to town after we cleared a castle or something out, and one of our players was gone for a bit, so he was waiting at town. When we got there he was meditating, so I ran up and attempted to stick my halfling dick in his mouth. The DM said he won't be a part of this, but the monk said roll for it. I rolled a 3 and he rolled a 1. The DM said I came in his mouth. TLDR, Birdman gets mouth full of halfling wizard dick.
Hey guys, this is the Rogue YouTuber here. I recently had a big change in my life. I had a baby daughter. Here she is. If you could do me a favor and remember to hit the subscribe button and bang the bell, I'm hoping to really create a YouTube channel that really gets people excited and brings people the best, most interesting content collated from across the internet. I'm saving up to save my little girl to Carnegie Mellon Computer Science Department, so please remember to like and subscribe. See you next time.